What's the best film of 2023? That's a question that came up in my most recent Twitch stream, link in the description. But instead of answering that question with a simple top 10, I decided to do a top 37 because I'm a wild man. Hit subscribe if you love movies. First, starting off with The Contestant, a little documentary about a Japanese man who had to stay in a room and basically live off of what he could get people to send him for a year. It is devastating and also uplifting at the very end. Good work. Next is a Canadian film, Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person. And yes, this is the best film title of the year. A lovely little coming-of-age story for a vampire who desperately doesn't want to bite people's necks. Good cinematography, good performances all around. Good job, Quebec. Next, at number 35 is A Difficult Year, and yes, the main reason this is here is because it features Nomi Merlan. I wish I could have an entire category just dedicated to her, but then this would probably still be the only film, and that wouldn't be much fun for anyone. It's a nice little comedy, although it's not exactly the best film ever, but if you have a crush on Nomi Merlan like I do, you should go check this out. Now we're on to number 34, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves. Oh my God, could someone please contact everyone in Hollywood and say, this is how you make a film for fans that's made by fans who actually respect what's going on in the film? Imagine if other films could be made like that. Wouldn't that be fun? Next is another Quebecois film from Canada called The Nature of Love. This is at number 33. This has a lot of chaotic moments in it, a lot of chaotic cinematography, and it's also a sexy movie. These two people you see in the poster, they bone down a lot. And there's just wonderful moments of chaos in this film. It's a great little depiction of what it's like to be in love with someone, to fall out of love with someone, to fall in love with someone else. And it's also about the way that people get divided because of cultural things that we think are perhaps more important than they are. A really nice film. I recommend it. I've already forgotten what number we're at right now, but Inflames is that number. It's going to be on the screen. Don't worry. This is a film that I think could be in the Twin Peaks universe. It could be. It is a film, it's considered to be a Canadian film, but it is actually from Pakistan, shot in Pakistan, and it just has that real nice Twin Peaks vibe to it. Really well shot, beautiful film to look at, and I think it's something you should check out if you're into David Lynch, although I'm not going to say that it's Lynchian. I don't think it's Lynchian, I just think it's good. Next is Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. Now, this is a film that I wasn't over the moon with when I saw it. I wasn't over the asteroid with when I saw it, but I think the strength of the production design, the strength of the performances, and the script overall make this a film worth watching, especially if you want to see Jeff Goldblum being an alien. My goodness, that's great. But this certainly is not the best Wes Anderson film, not by a long shot. It's a little meta though, which is nice. If you're into that, check it out. Next up is a film that I saw at TIFF called The Beast. I basically went to see this because I try to see one Léa Seydoux film every year, and this ended up being the one. It's a dystopian film. It takes place in the future, and there's DNA machines and things like that. And I honestly don't remember a lot from this film, but I do remember really liking the vibe of it, and I think it's one that you should watch. I wish I could give you better information about it. I'm so very sorry. Next is the latest film from Ryosuke Hamaguchi, the director of Drive My Car, which was a major breakout hit last year. This is the new film, Evil Does Not Exist. I will say, and this will come up again, this is not better than Drive My Car. It simply is not. That is a hard vault to clear, if I do say so myself. Evil Does Not Exist still has that slow cinema type vibe to it. It just has an ending that comes out of nowhere, and it was so shocking that it made me wonder if I was watching like a dream sequence or something like that. It does try to tackle themes of land being taken over by corporations who are just trying to make a quick buck and having no actual care for the land that they're doing it on, which is, just something that all corporations do anyways. And I think the end of the film is meant to show you the anger that can come out of that sort of situation, but it just doesn't feel like it fits. It's almost like there's too much violence in this movie, this Ryosuke Hamaguchi movie. Still good, still worth a watch, but not his best. Now we're moving on to May December, which is a film that I desperately wanted to like, except the Netflix version that I saw of it looked like absolute garbage because of their compression algorithms. Netflix, stop it. Stop doing that. I think any director that works with Netflix, they should start writing in like minimum bandwidth or minimum bit rate into the contracts for when they sign on, because you cannot have a film shot on film look good with Netflix's compression. You just can't. And this film really suffered because of that. But I tried to get over it, and I think it showed a very interesting character study, very meta in the way that we're watching Natalie Portman as an actress try to learn how to be a character who is herself just doing something that we rightly would vilify and rightly should vilify. And I also think that Charles Melton in this film is a bit of a revelation, and I think it's worth seeing for his performance alone. And then you just happen to have two of the best in their craft doing it, having fun, having all kinds of juicy moments with one another. Well worth watching. If only Netflix could show it properly. Next we have the Canadian film Blackberry, and oh yes, this was a delicious watch. I think this entire film front to back was incredibly well done, very well acted, gives you everything that you could possibly want in a film, in a comedic retelling of the ups and downs of Blackberry. It wasn't a 4-star film though. It had a couple of moments where I really felt like they needed to pull it back, take it out, not have it there. This film needed to be just a little bit tighter, and it easily could have made it much higher up in this list. But this is a hard list to get higher up on. There are many, many good movies here, but this one, really liked it. Hope to see more from Matt Johnson, and I really probably should watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia now that I know how good Glenn Howerton is. So, and next we're going to move on to Theater Camp, which is an interesting film to have in between, or at least beside, Blackberry, because it too is a kind of mockumentary, even though Blackberry is not a mockumentary, it's a faux documentary of sorts. It has a documentary look to it, that's what I'll say. Theater Camp, though, is a mockumentary in the style of This Is Spinal Tap, but it's all about, you guessed it, a theater camp. And while I think the film is really well made, I think the comedy suffers a little bit because it is very insular. If you did not go to theater camp, there's stuff that they're talking about that you are not going to know anything about. But there are moments that still made me smile, made me laugh, and the film was just so well made that I couldn't help but have a great time while watching it. Even Ben Platt being in it was tolerable, which says something. Next up, we've got The Holdovers, a film that someone in my chat described as a potential Christmas classic. And they may be right, but I also don't think that anyone's ever going to watch this again. Mainly, this film is on here because it looks great. They really nailed that 70s aesthetic. You could feel the film grain, and I just wanted to reach out and touch it and maybe put it in my pocket as well. Paul Giamatti and Dominic Sessa are also great in this. Divine Joy Randolph is also great. This is a film that is absolutely carried by its performances and its warm, loving kind of embrace that it puts on you. It didn't wow me in the way that I was hoping to, which is why it's only a 3.5 star, but still a very strong film, and I am not angry that I saw it. Next up, we have maybe the horniest film of the year, Infinity Pool, by good old Enfant Terrible. The French are coming to kill me now. Brendan Cronenberg. And yes, this is the movie where Alexander Skarsgård finishes himself to completion and you get to see it. But aside from that, you also get Mia Goth being absolutely insane. And if we know anything about modern cinema, it's that if you have a crazy Mia Goth in your film, you made a good goddamn movie. Those are just the rules. Aside from that, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on here, narratively, thematically. It's actually, I think, a deeper and richer film than people give it credit for, and I think probably benefits from a rewatch. And hopefully I will. But not today, because I gotta talk about Dream Scenario, the latest Nicolas Cage film that's actually good. You'll remember from last year, a movie called Pig, or maybe the year before, that was a Nicolas Cage film that was actually good. Well, now we have another one. Not as good as Pig, I don't think, but still an incredible film. I think maybe, just maybe, this film does too much too early, and it can no longer live up to what it does early in the film. And I hate to say that that makes a film worse, but when a film leaves you feeling a little bit less satisfied than how you felt in the middle of it, that's not great. That's not a good look. So I will say the Nicolas Cage, great in this. Loved pretty much everyone who was in this. Having a surprise Michael Cera show up, even though he wasn't that much of a surprise, was also great. And there's just lots of fun times in this movie. Lots of awkwardness, lots of weirdness. Lots of scary shit, actually. I kind of love how Nicolas Cage was able to be a bit of a horror villain in this, but in a way that works so well for him in particular. I can't imagine a single other person playing the lead character in this other than Nicolas Cage. Good job, everybody. Next up is Priscilla, the film about Priscilla Presley by Sofia Coppola. And this film really wowed me when I saw it, and I actually first rated it a 4-star and then brought it back to 3.5. And the reason for that really has to do with some of the pitfalls that it falls into because it's a period film. And when you watch a period film, you may notice a couple of things, especially one like this where the budget is lower. This is a film when they're shooting in interiors, it's lush, it's gorgeous, and there's a real material feel to everything, which I think is it's on purpose in this film. They want you to be able to feel the texture of the time period that you're in while watching this film. But when they go to exteriors in this film, it really feels like they're trying to cut out the rest of the world so you don't see like a McDonald's in the shot or like a brand new Tim Hortons, because I'm pretty sure this was shot in Canada. Because of that, there are just some shots, some moments, some scenes in this film that fall flat compared to other things that are happening. But I think it needs to be said that Kaylee Spenny and Jacob Elordi do really well here, and I think that Sofia Coppola did a great job with this. It's just too bad that it couldn't be that much better. But I guess you probably need like an extra $10 million for that. So, shit. Speaking of the horniest film of the year, is it Saltburn? I don't know, but it is a pretty horny film. This one I saw just recently. I hope there's not a lot of recency bias in this. But I will say that I love the cinematography. You are always going to get me. You're always going to hook me with a full frame film. And I loved the kind of detailed look to the image. It didn't seem washed out. I was seeing every single pixel possible, but not in a weird digital way. It still felt like I was watching something real, maybe something that was shot back in 2005, 2006. The performances, especially Jacob Elordi, good for him. It was really nice to see Rosamund Pike. I haven't seen her in a long ass time. And of course, Barry Keoghan bears all, which is not an easy thing to do. This film, though, I think falters more because of its narrative. It tries to be one thing, and then it tries to be another, and then it tries to be another. And it was that final turn that really turned me off. I could have really done with there being a bit more mystery left in this film, a bit more up to the imagination of the viewer, and unfortunately, that doesn't happen. But overall, really good. Next up is Anatomy of a Fall. You remember that film that won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Well, I saw it, and you know what? It's not bad, although I don't think that it's like best film of the year material. I think maybe Cannes got this one a little bit wrong. I will say, though, that this, as a crime film, as a trial film, is maybe the most French film I have ever seen in terms of the criminal justice system. I can't believe how French the French criminal justice system is. I thought there was going to be a point in this film where one of the prosecutors or one of the lawyers was just going to light up a cigarette in the middle of a scene and start talking about like Sartre or something like that. It had that vibe. It was so French. So very French. You've probably heard this from other people who are not me. Sandra Hüller is very good in this film and may actually end up getting an Oscar nomination for it, which I think is well deserved. And this film does have the best use of a 50 Cent song ever in a movie, without a doubt. But it didn't really do it for me. I kind of want a film like this to thrill me a little bit more. I never got to that edge of the seat feeling. And that may be more because this film is not trying to be a thriller and is more trying to be a procedural. And if that's the case, good for them. But I still didn't get as much out of it as I wanted to. And maybe that's my fault. But as it stands, it's still doing pretty well. It's at this position right there, because I forgot what number we're on. Next up is The Boy and the Heron, the latest film from acclaimed director Hayao Miyazaki, maybe his last film, depending on who you talk to. And this film is, of course, gorgeous. It's a Studio Ghibli film. It's going to be the most gorgeous thing you've ever seen in your life. And I think it's kind of fascinating that the narrative of this seems like a meta-narrative on Miyazaki's life to a certain degree, the way that he makes films, the way that he approaches art. And I think that's a fascinating way for Miyazaki to approach this film. Whether or not that makes an actually captivating story is a completely other conversation. And while I think that this film kind of brushes up against greatness, it never fully captures it. It never grasps on to greatness and says, I'm a great movie. It's a really good one. It's a decent one, but it's certainly not Miyazaki's best. And it's not even the best animated film of the year. Try to guess in the comments below what is. It's probably not going to be very hard. Speaking of things that are not very hard, I'm sorry, that was the wrong transition because Godzilla Minus One is fucking hard. This is a hard goddamn movie. Emotionally, it goes hard. Godzilla killing things goes hard. This is actually one of the most surprising films of the year for me. The humans actually being tolerable people that I don't mind watching is such an achievement for a Godzilla film. And maybe it's something that it's just the American films that they have messed up and gotten so poorly in the last 10 years or so. But Godzilla Minus One knocks it all out of the park. I do love that with this film, once again compared back to the American films, we go back to big Godzilla with probably being a guy in a suit, or at least CGI that makes him look like a guy in a suit. He's slow, he's deliberate, and he's got that atomic breath that will absolutely destroy everything. And the terror that is elicited from Godzilla in this film is palpable. I love that. It also seems like this is meant to be kind of a soft remake of the original film, which might have been something that put me off, but they did include the iconic original Godzilla score near the end of the film, which sold me. At that point, if I was ever on the fence of putting this at a 3.5, that put me over the top. That got me. I popped like a motherfucker when that happened. Great moment in film. Maybe one of the best moments of the year. Hearing that iconic Godzilla score. It's just, mwah. Incredible. Speaking of incredible, it's the mother of all lies, the first 4-star film that we are going to be looking at. We're getting real close to that top 10. Now, this movie is a 4-star film because it completely reinvents how to do documentaries in an incredible way. Essentially, a young woman who lives in Casablanca, I believe, she decides that she's going to recreate her entire neighborhood with little puppets for people, do all of the buildings, and use that to tell the story about a particular night that happened in Casablanca. But then we also have the grandmother coming into the narrative, the person who you see here, who has lied about this night her entire life, which is why she is called the mother of all lies. And by being confronted by this thing that her granddaughter has created, she must start to figure out, or at least start to come to terms with, the lies that she's been telling and why she's been telling them. It's remarkable. It's a remarkable documentary, and I do hope that every single person has a chance to see it. It looks beautiful, it's creative, and this is the kind of inventiveness I want to see out of documentaries. No more talking head bullshit. This is what we want. Well, this is what I want, at least. And I hope you want it too. Moving from one film I saw at TIFF to another film that I saw at TIFF, it's Sweet Dreams, which, if you read my Letterboxd review for it, simply says Wes Anderson x colonialism. This is actually the best Wes Anderson film that came out this year. This is all about Dutch colonialism happening in those colonial times. This takes place in Indonesia, and it's basically about a bunch of shitty white people acting like shitty people, but in like a comic way, you know? Like, they're so comically bad, cartoonishly bad, that you kind of just laugh at how shitty that they are. And then, wouldn't you know it, bad things happen to them. It's another film that, from a cinematography standpoint, is lush. The colors are vibrant. It's a film where you just kind of want to walk through the screen and live in that world. And it certainly does have a Wes Anderson quality to it, although not in terms of the symmetry of the image, more in the way that people are portrayed as being bad and shitty, but still kind of funny, but not in a likable way. I guess that's maybe how it's not like a Wes Anderson film. But this is a one that I would absolutely suggest that you go check out if you have the opportunity to. Only 2,600 people have seen it, so you could be the 2,601st if you try hard enough, and you should. Moving on from Sweet Dreams to a film that won the Grand Prix Award at Cannes, it is Jonathan Glazer's new film, The Zone of Interest. And this is a film where, if you understand the premise for it, you kind of know what you're gonna get, but it's also a little bit different than you might expect. This is a film about the people who ran Auschwitz, the concentration camp. This is about the family that ran Auschwitz, who lived at Auschwitz. So the Nazi military commander and his family living in a house that's literally right beside Auschwitz. And what this film is at its most terrifying is an examination of how benignly evil these people are. The fact that they can live so close to what is going on in that camp. Now, this film is kind of great because it never actually shows you what's going on in the camp, but you do hear it. All of these little moments that happen in the house in this homestead, they are small things, right? It's a family trying to figure out, if they should fire a maid or something, what to have for dinner, what people should be learning at school, like those very small, minute things happening, but you hear the occasional gunshot. You hear people screaming. You hear the constant firing of the furnaces as people are being forced in there and killed. And it shows you that these people who live there have kind of tuned that out. They no longer hear it because they're so used to the sounds of destruction and genocide. And strangely, I think that's actually one of the more affecting aspects of the film, because as we, the viewer, go through, at least this is what I found, I started noticing those elements of the sound mix less and less and less as the film went on. And then I would sort of realize it and say, wait, have I not heard anyone be tortured in a while? And then I would listen properly, acutely, and realize it was there the whole time. And I had just started tuning it out, much like these people would have. It is absolutely an indictment of Nazis, as if you needed another one of those. And it is another beautiful example of Jonathan Glazer doing something a little bit different. I will say, though, that this film doesn't hit it out of the park. There's a reason why it's not a 4.5-star film. He's certainly done better in the past. The film that he did with Scarlett Johansson is a great example of that. And I think that maybe a little bit more here could have been done, although I frankly am not sure how. It just felt like maybe this was a bit of an unfinished idea, or maybe it was a one-trick pony. A really well-made, very well-shot one-trick pony, but still a bit of a one-trick pony. But I will say that it is still worth watching, and if you can see it in a theater with a really good sound system, that is probably how you should. Don't watch this on Netflix or whatever the hell it's going to end up. Moving on from a depressing film about a genocide to a depressing film about a girl having sex for the first time, it's How to Have Sex, this year's winner of the Aftersun Award for a film about British people going away on vacation and not having a great time. This is, I think, an important film, a film that really touches on the pressures that people feel when they want to have sex for the first time, when they're with people who are sexually active, and what they're willing to go along with and ultimately try to stop from happening, and the aftermath of those things happening. I'm not going to try to not give anything away here, but this is exactly what you would expect out of a film that is, I think, taking place in Ibiza, so it's a lot of loud, annoying people, a lot of loud, annoying music, and it has that kind of Spring Breaker-esque cinematography to it that really emphasizes each one of those aspects. But this is a film that is not trying to be Spring Breakers 2. It's a film that's grounded narratively and emotionally in a way that Spring Breakers is just not. And it's one that I think anyone who has like a 12-year-old daughter should probably watch. And it's probably also a film that a lot of just 12 and 13-year-olds should watch. It's one of those movies that is probably going to shape a lot of people's minds about how to approach the topic of sex with teenagers when you're just discussing it, sexual education and things like that. So, great film. I think this is one of the better ones of the year, certainly. Are we almost at the top 10? No, we're not. We're a few away. So now we're just running through TIFF films that I saw, and these are the very best of them. So now we're on to this Vietnamese film called Inside the Yellow Cocoon Shell. This film won the Camera d'Or at the Cannes International Film Festival. It's the main reason why I went to check it out. And as you can see, this movie is 3 hours long. And let me tell you, this is the slowest of slow cinema films. This film goddamn crawls, but I am so happy that it did. It is a film that takes so much time and executes each and every one of its shots with such intricate detail that it's a marvel to behold. There are like 20-minute one-takes in this film, and they are not that uncommon. If you want to see a film hold on an image, hold on an emotion, hold on how someone is even just traversing through this kind of road trip movie through Vietnam, I mean, I don't think that last sentence I said just made sense, but it's okay because this film will kind of make you feel like you don't know anything anymore. I do think this is a great film for people who are trying to make their first film to watch, because it can show you that with a very small budget, a nothing budget, but a lot of preparation, it shows that you can do quite a lot with that. Remember, kids, if you don't have money, you need time. And this is the kind of film that you can make with time and care and dedication. And for those of you who think that maybe you don't want to waste 3 hours of your life on a film like this, I guarantee you that you should. Just try it. Just try it. Just try it once. Just try the 3-hour film once. You'll be surprised, I think. Next up is the TIFF film that surprised me the most. This is The Teacher's Lounge, and this is the film that Germany decided to select for the Best International Feature at the Oscars. I was not supposed to see this film. I did not have it on my list, but I decided that I would switch out one film for another because this fit my schedule just a little bit better. So I had no idea what I was walking into. I didn't even know it was Germany's selection for the Oscars when I walked into it. And I was floored by it. I couldn't believe how good this was. It is literally about something that happens in a teacher's lounge. The whole film takes place at a school, and you are taken through step by step as the system tries to deal with a problem that was created by the system itself. And it's such a Kafkaesque, ridiculous story that you can only just hit your head or hold your head and shake your head and wonder how all of these very intelligent people could allow something like this to just carry on and carry on and carry on. And there's just a wonderful, wonderful little twist at the end that really resets or reframes everything that came before it. Really, really nice. Excellent filmmaking. It looks good. The acting is great. One of the best of the year. And if there is any justice, it will make it into the Oscars, but it may not. We will have to see. Another film that was at TIFF, but I did not see at TIFF, is Fallen Leaves, latest film from Aki Kaurismäki. And this was my first Kaurismäki film, and it definitely will not be my last. This is another kind of slow film, but there's a kind of smugness to it. And I think that slow cinema is never supposed to feel smug, but this film does. It kind of just has a bit of a smug feel to it. And the style of the cinematography is also very detached. This film does not deal with close-ups or even medium close-ups that often. And I kind of just love that the room and the space that this film gives you to observe the characters, to observe their interactions, and to get a very good idea of the spaces that they inhabit. It also has one of the best uses of a Jim Jarmusch film ever in a film, and I literally laughed at no joke harder this year than a joke that was made in this film. And this is not a funny movie, but goddamn, did they get me. They got me good, and it was amazing. This is a real cinephile film, I think, and if you count yourself as one, you should absolutely go see it. You will have a good time. And now we're here at film number 10. Yes, we are in the top 10 films of the year, and you know that I had to put Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 here. You know that I did. Because if there's nothing else I love seeing in a film, it's effort and it's execution. And this film has so much effort, and the execution is pretty much flawless. Good for Tom Cruise for putting this film together and for having the balls to drive a goddamn motorcycle off of a cliff, along with every other dumb thing that he does in this movie. I will say, initially when I first saw this film, I wasn't as impressed with it as when I saw it the first time. It just felt strange in some moments. Some of the dialogue scenes had this weird feel to them. It's like they were breaking the 180-degree rule. If you remember the very first scene of the film, or not the very first scene, but the first scene in the meeting, in the briefing, when all of those intelligence people are just finishing each other's sentences and all of the camera shots are low angle and really sharp and nothing feels quite right, it made me realize that they just shot this whole thing like it was an action movie. If it was a small, slow little dialogue scene, shoot it like an action movie. We don't care about continuity between shots. We don't care about the 180-degree rule. Everything's an action movie. And once I realized that the second time around, it really just made the film as a whole feel more cohesive. Like, if you can think back to an action movie, any action movie that you've seen, there are those slow bits, and then it amps up, and you're always on this roller coaster. And I think what they tried to do in this film is just have it always be amped, but still have it going up and up and up and up and up so that you never felt like you were bored. And they pulled it off. It's certainly not a perfect film. I don't even think it's the best Mission Impossible film, but how could I not put this in the top 10? When I desperately declare that we need to have movies that give a shit, made by people who give a shit, how could I leave this one out? Because good Lord, did they ever give a shit? Well done, everyone involved. Film number 9. Of course, it's Poor Things by Yorgos Lanthimos, and how could it not be? Aside from Sweet Dreams and the Wes Anderson film, this is the most Wes Anderson-ass film on this list, except it's also very much not. I say it's Wes Anderson-like because of the way the production design was done, but nothing could be further from a Wes Anderson film in terms of how they approach the material. And I'm mostly just talking about Emma Stone saying, you know what, let's just have all of the sex. Let's just have me have all of the sex possible. Let's have me be the most naked person in the history of filmmaking. And it's a brave move for her. And it's one that I respect the hell out of. Aside from that, though, this is a great showcase of Emma Stone's acting talents, going from someone who basically has the brain of a baby to a woman in the span of not very long of a time. And so if we're talking about criticisms, we can come at this movie from the idea of having that born stupid yesterday, or what was it called? Being born hot yesterday? Yeah, that's the one. Very much leans into that, and I think to a certain degree is trying to critique that, but we'll leave that for another video that I will never ever make. Everything about this film just works for me. The cinematography, all of those fisheye lens shots, mwah, I love them. The production design, Mark Ruffalo in this movie is great. The makeup on Willem Dafoe is disgusting. He is also really good. Rami Youssef does a good job. I think probably the only person who feels a little bit out of their depth is Jared Carmichael. And I think that is just because he doesn't have the same type of experience as some of these other people. You are naturally going to look not as good when you are acting against Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo when they're at their best. So it's all right, kid. Don't worry about it. Oh, yeah, and I think that the music in this was also really good, and I think it was different than what I was used to, but I never, ever, ever remember music that well, so shit. Shit on me. Shit on toast. But not on this movie. You can't. It's a good one. And at number 8 for the year, Boses Afraid. And this is just a film that I have been thinking about forever and ever and ever since I saw it. It is a dark film, a funny film, a well-shot film, a freaky film, a well-acted film. It has pretty much everything going for it, and it's also just bonkers. It's a bonkers-ass movie, and I think I kind of love the audacity in this that is on display. So much could have gone wrong with this film, and I'm sure some would argue that a lot did go wrong with this film, but to me, to have the gumption, to have the audacity to make this film and to pretty much nail it in terms of what they were trying to do, it's awe-inspiring. I have not seen a film like it. I may never see a film like it. And I hope that there aren't going to be any people in the comments telling me that I just like it because it's weird, because there is so much good filmmaking going on here that it's almost undeniable. And I think this is a film that will, over time, be appreciated for what it is more and more and more. An absolute banger, and one of the first bangers of the year. The film that made me think that, hey, this is going to be an okay year in cinema. Boses Afraid. Thank you very much, Ari Aster. Can't wait to see what you do next. Moving on to number 7 on this list, we have Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. And to be perfectly frank, the reason why this film isn't higher up on the list is because it's not a complete movie. It is the best animated film of the year. It certainly has the most animation in any film I think I've ever seen. What they do with animating characters differently, animating different scenes, in weird and strange and different ways, having everything flow together, fit together, do everything. It's insane. It's an insane film. Films shouldn't be able to look like this, and yet this film does. Now, I will say, I do not think this film is better than Into the Spider-Verse. I do think it is a step down from Into the Spider-Verse. But once again, the fact that they tried so much in this film and most of it works is incredible in its own right. I only wish that all of the animators didn't have to pull all kinds of double shifts and ridiculous shifts because the directors kept changing their mind on things. Not a good look, fellas. Oh, and can we give a shout out to Spider-Punk right now? Because probably one of the best film characters of the year. You know, for anarchy reasons. Wink. Having nothing to do with anarchy, we have Hirokazu Koreeda's Monster in at number 6. Now, much like Evil Does Not Exist, the Ryuzuki Hamaguchi film, Monster is not Koreeda's best film. His last film, Brokers, is, I think, a better film than this. But this is still just one of the best of the year. In fact, from the looks of it, it's the 230th best film of all time. That's pretty wild. I was not expecting to see that. But this is a film from a narrative standpoint that's trying to do something similar to Rashomon, but is definitely not Rashomon. The themes in this film are really about how you never really have the full story about what's going on in someone else's life. And it's only when you combine the aspects of a couple of different people's lives together do you get the full story and understand what each person is going through and why they do the things that they do. This film is heartbreaking. This film is infuriating, but not in the way that makes it a bad film. You're just going to be made angry by a couple of things that happen in it because that's a normal reaction. And it's gorgeous to boot. And it has one of those nice little ambiguous endings that I think leaves things open for enough people to come out of it thinking to themselves, oh, that had a happy ending, but I don't think that it did. Oh no, I do not think this film has a happy ending at all. Speaking of films that may or may not have happy endings, Past Lives is your number 5 film. And oh my goodness, this is 189th on the Letterboxd Top 250 as well. Woo. Films this year are doing real well. This is, I think, a film that a lot of people have seen so far. It is a directorial debut, the strongest directorial debut of the year, unless I'm forgetting something. Celine Song should be patted on the back a lot for this achievement. And when it comes to this film, and when you talk about it in terms of cinematic achievement, there's a lot of ways that you can approach that. There is the execution and the effort of Mission Impossible. There is the beauty of Monster. And then with Past Lives, it's all about the emotional connection between the viewer, the characters, and the characters themselves. And this, I think, was probably the best film of the year at doing this. I was devastated after watching this film, emotionally drained, because you are seeing people communicate in such honest ways that it's almost alien. It's almost unrecognizable from the way that people actually have conversations. And maybe that's just a self-report on me and the conversations that I have. But to see two people just get into the nitty-gritty of why they feel the way that they do and what that means and how that affects those around them, you just don't see films like this every day. And beyond that, it is beautiful and it is really well acted. And so it was very easy for me to put this in the top 5 of the year. It's that film that doesn't need $100 million to make you feel something. And that is a wonderful thing to observe firsthand. Speaking of films that don't need $100 million to make you feel things, Perfect Days, the Japanese entry for the Best International Film at the Oscars and the latest fiction film directed by Wim Wenders. And the story behind this film is fascinating. You see, before the pandemic, Japan was going to have the Olympics, and they decided that they were going to build a lot of really cool-looking toilets for the Olympics that were supposed to happen in 2020. Well, they built those toilets, but then the Olympics got all screwed up because of the pandemic. Everything got pushed to 2021, and the people who had made these toilets, and I guess probably the people who run Tokyo as well, were like, man, we have these great toilets, but no one's ever going to see them. What do we do? And so they decided to bring in one of the best German filmmakers of all time in Wim Wenders, the guy who directed Paris, Texas, that Wim Wenders. They decided to bring him in and were like, look, dude, whatever you want to do, just please do something with these toilets. And he's like, all right. So he made a goddamn movie about a toilet cleaner. And that toilet cleaner is played by Koji Yakusho. And it is just the epitome of slow cinema. It is deliberate, it's slow paced, and it takes you through the nuances and the details of this man's life. And it is so enveloping that it almost made me want to quit what I was doing at the time, which I guess was watching films at TIFF, and just fly to Tokyo and clean toilets for the rest of my life. The deliberate nature of this film and the way that this man lives his life, the way that the aesthetic of the film is a reflection of how this man lives his life, and how the aesthetic changes a little bit as it becomes a little bit more chaotic, but never really steers too far away from that very grounded, very real, and almost dreamlike. I know that's kind of an oxymoron, but if you see it, you'll know what I mean. Kind of dreamlike way of approaching the subject. It's incredible. And then on top of that, Koji Yakusho has maybe one of the best performances of the year, and no one's ever going to say anything about it. He's probably not going to get nominated for an Oscar, and that sucks because he's so good. And he has one of those moments that's just perfect for the Oscars. That, oh my God, the film's over and now I need to let all of my emotions out. He does that. Also, best soundtrack of the year. All of the licensed music in this is like rock and roll from like the 60s and 70s, but not like the rocking rock and roll. It's like the Velvet Underground and that kind of shit. So a great film for music lovers, a great film for toilet aficionados, a great film for cinephiles, and an absolute must-watch recommendation. One of the best films of the year, bar none. And now we're into the top 3, and you knew these were going to be here if you've been watching. We got Barbie at number 3, and honestly, I think this film is interchangeable with the film that's at number 2, which you can probably already guess what it is. This is a film that I think made me feel the happiest after I walked out of it from the theater. I felt so happy after walking out of Barbie. I just loved everybody. I loved every single person in the world. Everyone that I walked by, I literally wanted to do that thing from, I guess, maybe the Viagra commercials where you just smile and wave at random strangers. I wanted to be on Viagra. That came out wrong. Everything about this film worked for me in one way or another. The production design, the costume design, all of it were top notch. Ryan Gosling absolutely killed it. Another one of those best performances of the year. And Margot Robbie just killed it as Barbie, as we all knew that she would. If anything is like not great about this movie, it's probably that car commercial bit that I think everyone has kind of latched onto, but even that seems like a very small gripe compared to the prowess of the filmmaking going on here. Even the callbacks and the references, explicit and implicit, to previous films. I'm looking at you, references to Jacques Tati. Make it so apparent that this is a film that was crafted with love and executed on a level that you very rarely see. And everything was pink. And I'm not a big fan of pink, but you know what? It's pretty good for a film that's very, very pink. Could have used more purple. Purple's pretty sick. I like purple. So well done to Greta Gerwig. It's so incredible to see a director come from essentially making 2 smaller, even indie-ish films to then making one of the highest grossing movies of all time. And I hope that just a lot of good can come from this film, especially for men. If you're a man and you haven't watched it because you think it's not for you, trust me, this movie is absolutely for you. And I'm not saying that in an ironic way. It's just for you. It's for all of us. Now, remember how I said that Barbie made me feel super happy after I left the theater? Well, for the number 2 best film of the year, we have Oppenheimer, the film that made me hate literally everyone around me. Because god damn it, can we just not have nuclear war anymore? Can we just get rid of all the nuclear bombs, please? That would be super cool. Now, this is a film that I think epitomizes what Christopher Nolan is all about, and I do think that it is one of his very best films, right up there with The Prestige. And probably one of the only Nolan films that I can actually remember rewatching. Like, I saw this film twice in theaters, mostly because I wanted to see it in 70mm IMAX, but also because I just wanted to experience it again. It is, for a film that is really just about people talking about science, being in boardrooms, and building up Oppenheimer's relationship with his wife, it does feel like a little bit of a roller coaster ride. It is gripping in a way that it probably shouldn't be, and that period pieces usually aren't. And I think it comes down to Christopher Nolan being able to make a film in a way that he is best at, which is over a long period of time and not giving a shit about linear time. So The Prestige is another great example of that. He's able to jump back and forth and tell different parts of different stories based on the way that that film is structured, and Oppenheimer is very much the same. Christopher Nolan has this problem where when he's creating a film that is very linear, he tends to rush. He tends to just not really care about fleshing out certain parts of the narrative, and he just wants to go, 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 go. The Dark Knight Rises is a great example of that, and that's the reason why The Dark Knight Rises is Nolan's worst film. It goes way too fast and he does not care about the narrative. In this case, he's jumping around time so much that it's essentially one long montage. And that way, he's able to like rush through things, but he's also able to cut out the things that we would normally need to see in order to make the narrative feel cohesive. And for that reason, this film just works really well. It works great. Not to mention the fact that the sound design is good. You can actually hear what people are saying. The nuclear explosion is incredible. And so many of these performances are Oscar worthy that it's kind of ridiculous. So there it is. Oppenheimer, #2 film of the year. Also, it looks great. Did I mention that? Great cinematography. Good job, whoever did that. And now, Cinephiles, it's time for the #1 film of 2023. And if you are on my Discord, you've probably heard me talk about it before, but you probably have not heard about it or had a chance to see it at all. But let me tell you what, do not expect too much from The End of the World is absolutely the best film of 2023. I saw this film at TIFF, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it ever since. And I know, you're looking at this poster and thinking to yourself, he's having a laugh. He's joking with us. There's no possible way this could be the best movie of 2023. It's got some Andrew Tate looking motherfucker with their head on a dodo bird. How could that be the best movie of the year? Well, let me tell you. This movie is all about a PA working for a production company, a production assistant working for a production company, basically a film worker, working long 18, 20-hour days, and it essentially shows you 1 to 2 days in her life. And it does so much more than that. This film is commenting on the history of Romanian cinema. It's a Romanian film, if I didn't mention that before. It's commenting on the nature of the film industry, the exploitation that's at the root of it. It's commenting on Uwe Boll and his legacy. He's in the movie and he plays himself. It's insane. It's also commenting on the way that people can change themselves when they're creating content. It was not a mistake when I referred to this person as an Andrew Tate looking person, because the main character routinely makes TikToks with a face filter that makes her look like Andrew Tate, and she just spews out all of the ridiculous shit that you would expect from Andrew Tate. And it's hilarious because you understand that it's satire, that it's taking shots at Andrew Tate. And it just goes on and on and on. And it's a beautiful setup for what happens at the end of the film, which is, I think, a 35 to 40 minute one shot that shows just how painfully boring it is to make a movie. But also, and this is kind of in the same way that Zone of Interest works, showing the banality of evil, it shows you the banality of evil of a corporation and what they are willing to go through and to do in order to potentially get them out of a lawsuit, maybe. It's incredible stuff, and I probably haven't done enough to actually convince you to go see this film, but I desperately need you to. I need you to search this film out and to give it a shot and to be patient with it. It's going to do some things that you're not used to. It literally takes a Romanian film from the 60s and inserts scenes from it throughout the film, but then you find out that even though that's an actual Romanian film, the actors from that original film show up later in the film that you're watching, playing the same characters that they play in that film. So this movie is trying to convince you that that other movie is actually real. And that in of itself is a comment on the kind of social realism that was at play with Romanian films in that time period. It's wild. It's wild, the different levels that this film is working at almost the entire time. It almost feels like it's too full, and yet when you watch it, it just all rolls by so seamlessly, so perfectly. It's like nothing I've ever seen before, and I have been thinking about it every single day since I have watched it. There's not been a day where I have not thought about this film, and I can't wait to watch it again. Hopefully I can. I'll buy it on Blu-ray. I don't care. I'll do whatever I need to do to see this film. And there you go, Cinephiles, the 37 best films of 2023. Thank you so much for sitting through all of that. That probably ended up being kind of long, and I hope you do go see some of those films. But also, let me know in the comments what your favorite films of the year were. I need to know. You need to tell me.